On the Rhythm, the Blueprint series. Today, our guest is Christie Lindor, a 2 times published author, a TEDx speaker, and a Forbes contributor. She's also been mentioned and published in Time Magazine, Fast Company, Boston Herald, and the Boston Voyager because she's in Boston, Yahoo Finance, Refinery 29, Bustle, and she's very active on LinkedIn, which is how I came to learn of Christie Lindor. She helped a friend of hers secure a position in the Boston political arena and at a grassroots level against people with big budgets, career politicians, if you will. No stranger to being an underdog, Christie has seen it as an opportunity her whole life anytime opposition or obstacles came her way. She doesn't believe in that, doesn't use it, doesn't keep it in her vocabulary. They're all opportunities. And being a first-generation born American may have something to do with that. Without further ado, Christie Lindor. Welcome to the Blueprint series. I am your host, Philip Lanos, and today I have an amazing guest that I'm excited to bring on, Christie Lindor. She is awesome on so many levels. Number one, because it's she, not he, which is something I want to make an effort to do more of. Number two, leadership is her forte. And number three, she is going to be able to teach us about how to get into the world of politics because they don't teach civics in high school anymore. I doubt anybody cares about it in college. And by the time you start to care, you have no idea where to start. So Christie, welcome to the show.
Thank you. Thank you, Philip, for having me.
Yes, I am excited. Now, we had a chance to chat just before we got started. So I'm in Los Angeles. You're in Boston, right?
Right.
And what I saw, what caught my attention was that you worked with someone named Liz Miranda on a grassroots level against all the odds. But even more importantly, you were doing your own thing and you put your life on hold just to get involved in politics. Explain that.
You know, what kind of brought me to the journey of where I was with the political campaign is also, I'm an introvert by nature. 2 years ago, I read a really cool book. It was called The Year of Yes by Shonda Rhimes. And I gave myself a challenge. I think this is November 2016. And during that book just so inspired me. I said, all right, so for the next year and a half, I'm going to say yes to everything that scares me. And that, and just making that decision ultimately led to a whole bunch of things on kind of like unfolding in my life. One of which helping my good friend and my sorority sister, Liz Miranda, run for office. And so let me go back to the political campaign. So Liz, just to give you a little bit of idea, I've known Liz for over 20 years. We're sorority sisters. And in the time that I've known her, since we were younger, she's always been very focused, very selfless about her community. And I've seen her make decisions which I think the common person I don't think would have made, you know, when she would be, kind of creating a community program, and she would have to be making the choice, does she pay her rent or does she put the money to get her program off the ground? That's how selfless that she was. And for 15 of the 20 years I've known Liz, I've been asking her to run for office because I'm like, we need people like you in office. And it's funny, she's the only friend that I've ever had to date that I always saw her in public office just because of how selfless she was. I'm like, these are the kind of people I would want to see, running our government. And, she always kind of brushed it off and I'm not into that. Let me go back to my, doing her community grassroots work. And unfortunately, in August of last year, this time in 2017, her brother got murdered. Her brother was unfortunately murdered in a nightclub due to a robbery. And I think it was that combined with some kind of political things that was just happening, that's happening in our times. A lot of social movements are happening. I think those kind of perfect storm factors really made her rethink, the idea that, what she's been doing, she felt like it was not enough for her community. She felt like she needed to take her leadership to another level. So I remember the day she called me. It was late March, this past spring. And she was kind of at the time exploring the idea because a seat opened in her district. where she's born and raised, where she's been doing her work. And she told me, she was like, Christy, you've been telling me for years, well, I'm really thinking about it, and here's the reasons, and, because of her brother and things like that. And I got so excited, when I heard that she was even thinking about it. And I was like, of course. I'm like, I'll be right there with you and helping you. I think you would be amazing at being, going into office and becoming a legislator in the state. And fast forward a couple months, that kind of rolled into her deciding to announce. I was with her, I was kind of, since she made the decision all the way till she announced, I was just a volunteer. Like, I wasn't planning on being anyone's campaign manager. I hadn't a clue. I've never done anything like that. I just knew I believed in Liz, and I believed in what she stood for. And I knew her story. I knew she would be amazing at that. And that's really what kind of started the journey. And I think about a month or so in, we've been looking for, some experienced people, to help run her campaign and to help us. It was me, her, and one of my other sorority sisters. And we couldn't find folk. We couldn't find anyone that was experienced enough to really help. There's a lot of, as you know, this past cycle, there's a lot of races happening. So a lot of the people that would be available were not available. And I kind of was like, wow, I didn't want to see her, this chance kind of pass her by. And I remember I kind of thought about it and said, you know what? Because I believed in Liz so much, I'm gonna like kind of put some things on hold, because I want to see her win. I was like, I've never done this before. And I remember we had this conversation where I was like, Liz, I've never done this, but I know you. I'm like, we'll figure it out together. And I know it's going to be hard, but let's do it. And then, I became her campaign manager, and we kind of forged ahead and went on this amazing, hard journey. It's the hardest thing I've ever done in my life. But I'm just so excited to see kind of where we landed with it.
Oh, wow. Okay. A lot to unpack there. And thank you for sharing that. There's one thing that stuck out to me. There was a lot of sorority influence there. Are there lessons that you learned from joining a sorority that led not only to obviously this relationship, but that held you guys together? Is it just that bond and that's as far as it goes? Or is there parts of being a member of a sorority that sort of led to this moment in terms of the leadership skills that may be teaching there? I'm not familiar with how that world works, but there may be a lot of people who would ask that. That's the first way. And why don't we start with that?
Yeah. So at least, I've been in this sorority for a long time. I'm a proud member of Delta Sigma Theta Sorority Incorporated. We're actually, I know some sororities, they, once their members, finish school, let's say graduate, undergraduate, or graduate, they kind of cease membership with that organization. It was like really more of a collegiate type of deal. With my sorority, it's a lifetime membership, it's a lifetime commitment. So these women have, in a sense, become family. And it's just like any family. You've got two choices, right? One, your family experience is what you make of it, and two, you have to really, unconditionally love the people. It's like these are kind of people that came into your life in an interesting way. And we have good times, we have bad times. But because we know we've got that lifetime commitment to our organization and to public service, we hold on to that. So we've literally watched each other grow up from being young women to becoming, adults, to watching us get married and people having children, and even through the sorority, there's even there's services once you pass away. So, for example, Aretha Franklin, may she rest in peace. She actually she's in one of my sorority sisters through the organization. So you may have recently read that they had a service for her. So it's something that it carries you through your life. And I don't think there's any other organization that I've actually been a part of that has that level of commitment and bond to each other and to the community.
Yeah, that is powerful. I did not know that Aretha Franklin was part of a sorority. Are there lessons that you can share, one or two points that maybe you took away that followed you throughout from just your interactions? Is it just interaction based, or is there some kind of material that you're provided with that sort of instilled this strong sense of being a leader in you? Because you are. In a big way, you're a strong leader. It's your ethos, and you're good at it from what I'm hearing. Do you think it started there, or does this start further back, like back with your parents?
Oh yeah, this goes way back. I'm the oldest of 8 kids, and I feel like I've been raising kids my whole life. Because I know being the eldest, I'm first generation American, and in my mother's culture, we're Haitian. So in the Haitian culture, the eldest child really is kind of second in command, if you will, of the household. So I mean, at the age of like 8 or 9 years old, I was kind of helping manage the household, cook, clean, take care of my brothers, help people with homework. And I mean, so I kind of had no choice. I had to kind of stand up and really kind of be a leader. And that just followed me throughout that followed me throughout school, that followed me throughout my college years. So I always, even though, I mentioned to you earlier that I'm an introvert, even though I sometimes try to hide in the background, the call to leadership always somehow finds me. And I always end up having to kind of step up, even when I don't want to. But I think it just seems to be kind of how I've been wired. And that's the journey that I've been on throughout my entire career. So,
and let's explore that. What was the first job you had, and how do you think it relates to where you are today?
So I joke about this with folks. My first job was actually McDonald's. I think I was 13 or 14 years old, and I really enjoyed working there because it was like me and all my friends worked there. And there's a couple of concepts that the efficiency of McDonald's. So people don't realize, like, if you've never worked at like a franchising type of place, at least back then, I don't know what the process is these days, but it was very methodical. Like there was a place for everything. It was very efficient. There was only so much time food had to be in the window. There was the time you had to be able to serve a customer from the time they walked in the door to the time they left. We had metrics, and we had hourly metrics. And my first supervisor, he was super, super uber type A. So like everything we did, we ran like so efficient, like to the T. Even how we packed ketchup or how we packed napkins, if you can believe it. And I remember our friends, we used to kind of make fun of him, like, man, he needs to chill. But you know what? Actually, that being in that environment really helped create a level of discipline. And I kind of secretly, like, really, I really liked our supervisor, even though our friends were like, oh yeah. I was like, you know what? Like, he can get a whole bunch done in like an hour. It just was amazing how efficient he was. And that was just something I always admired in him and I took with me. So it's interesting. People don't realize, like, you can actually learn some really cool skills working at McDonald's. I don't know if they're still that way, but when I was there, that was my experience.
Right. No, and I like that you brought up 2 things. The first one I feel like the second one's going to escape me when we go into this, but the first one you brought up was being exposed to metrics that early. And then the other was type A personality. Now, granted that I want to introduce this story to a younger audience who may not have that kind of work experience, even though we're talking about working at McDonald's and their first job, I think that they may end up going to work in other places where that may not be the case. So can you unpack your understanding of type A personality and then how important metrics are to what you do today? Because that's the first time you experienced it at McDonald's, and it clearly carries over into today.
Sure. I mean, so type A, I think there's like a spectrum of people who are kind of considered type A personalities. So for those out there who's never heard that term, there's kind of 2 categories. I can even say there's even 3 categories of people. And this is kind of from a psychologist kind of lens. But someone who's type A is someone who really likes things that are orderly. And this is general, right? Like I said, there is a spectrum. But typically a type A, they like things that are very, orderly. They like to be on time. They have really good attention to detail. They're super organized. And they just really kind of do things in a very methodical fashion. As opposed to someone who's more type B. Type B is what you would maybe call someone who's more kind of creative, really not as focused on time, not really, they're really about kind of living in the moment, like how, they kind of go with what they're feeling and what feels right at that time, and not necessarily prescribe to a specific method or system. So you would say, most people would say, a lot of type A's generally, and again, I'm really overgeneralizing it, maybe like accountants, maybe like I'm a consultant, consultant, it may even be doctors, they live in a very precise world, as opposed to type B may be more creative. And again, I'm being very, very general here, just to give you an idea of what when people say that, what it means. I don't think, just personally, I don't think there's nothing wrong with either versions. I think you need both, honestly. It's kind of like a yin and yang thing. I think you need both styles, working styles or personality styles, to really make anything work. Because I feel like sometimes if you're type A, you may not be as flexible or may not be able to deal with certain ambiguity as much as someone who's like a type B. But type B, they need organization. They need to kind of sometimes bring some structure to their cool, bold ideas. So I think you need both, personally. So that's one. And the second question about metrics. I realized the importance of metrics. I think even from school, I think my first supervisor really drilled it into me of how to work and have metrics in a way, like down to like a very tactical level. But I think metrics are a compass, right? You can't really be successful unless you're able to measure it, unless you're able to know, like, okay, I went out, even like, think about it. If you have a Fitbit on, I went from point A to point B, and I was able to calculate how many miles I ran, how long it took me. And I can also be able to track, how was that compared to what I did yesterday? I mean, that's metrics. That's essentially metrics. So it's just a way to really measure progress. And I think humans are happiest when they're able to see progress happening. Even if it's taking them time, even if it may take more time for something to get done, but as long as you can see the progress, I think that's why it's important in metrics, to have metrics, but it's important in leadership as well, to be able to take people along on a journey. They got to know where they're at, right? You got to know where the North Star is, right? And where you're headed. And metrics is really a key indicator and an enabler to do that.
I'm glad you broke that down from your own words, specifically because I imagine that it's that knowledge that you captured early on that has been able to help you continually pursue what you want out of life without losing enthusiasm. Because as we discussed earlier, before we actually started recording, we had talked about the idea of people thinking a career is a forever thing. Like you make this decision and that's what you have to do. And if anybody were to take a look at your life, for example, or anyone else and how they got to where they are, it's never just been that kind of path. And people hear that and they're like, yeah, I know. And yet when it comes to their own life, they believe it's that linear.
It absolutely, there's nothing linear about it. And when you think about it, I think that's with life. What's interesting when you think about kind of where we are in society today, I can't say every single, but a majority of rules that was created in the workforce were created based on a different era. So if you think about it, a lot of the rules around, like, you had to work a job from 8 to 5 or 9 to 5. You had to work 40 hours. You had to go into an organization and be there for the rest of your life. And that organization took care of you. Like, all of those rules was based on a time when like the U.S., United States respectively, was at the height of the Industrial Revolution. And we're talking like 50, 60 years ago. And so those rules of the workplace was created for a different era. And so when you think about what's happening now, and it's not just happening in the U.S., it's happening across the world, imagine like the workforce is like a body. It's like a body going through puberty, right? And if it's somebody's body going through puberty, it's literally growing too fast for the bone structure, right? And that's when people experience a lot of pain and they go through a lot of, emotional, mental. That's actually what's happening to our workforce right now, because what's happening is people are still holding on to these beliefs that are from a different time when we're like in the knowledge, we're like in digital age, we're in the knowledge age. We're 4 or 5 generations out of when the rules were created. So I think what's interesting with all that disruption is that we, as a society, have to begin to create a new set of rules. And yes, you do not have to stay in the same place. You don't have to make this. You can make a decision and be okay in that moment because you made a decision based on the information you had at that particular moment in time. But the minute that you have new information, guess what? It's a new time. It's okay to make a new decision. There's nothing wrong with that. And I think to me that actually blends better with the way life is. Life is very fluid and everything is very kind of gray. And I think it's better to kind of go with that manner. So well, yes, you want to have some basic ideas of what you may want to do and maybe give it some time to manifest, right? So let's say, for example, if I took a job today and I said, you know what, when I took that job at that particular moment in time, that was a good decision for me in my life. And then I may find out 6 months in, I'm like, hey, this is not what I thought it would be. But you know what, let me kind of write it out. That's my first hypothesis. Let me give it another 3 months. Let me give it another 6 months, right? To make sure I'm not just kind of making an impulse decision. And so if I make it to a year and it's still not what I thought it would be in 6 months, well, then you know what? It's time for me to make another decision. And now with new information based on the experiences I've had. I just kind of totally made that example up. I think people, you do what you think is best for you. But know that you're not bound to these kind of industrial era rules of working. They don't work in today's environment. And it's about really kind of creating, success on your own terms.
Bringing back what we were talking about with metrics, you sort of have an internal compass. You said, this is the information I have now after having made the decision. And now I can make a decision based off that. That's essentially what a metric is, coming back to that. I like that. And I want to take it back. So how did you make it out of McDonald's? And I'm not saying that in a sense of where, oh, you worked at McDonald's. McDonald's actually turned me down when I tried to apply when I was a kid. But that's not about me. What I'm saying is, even I was with it. I wanted to go in that direction. How did you make it out of McDonald's?
Funny story again. My job at McDonald's ended because of my mom. My mom, and may she rest in peace, she kind of saw the decisions I was making at that time, and she felt like I should have been doing something else with my time. And so she was the one that really forced me to quit and I found an opportunity working, interning in a corporate office setting. And that's really what it was, because I actually was enjoying McDonald's. But it was very interesting. I didn't see what my mom saw in me at that time. I think, I just wasn't really believing in myself as much. And I think it was just, kind of the environment that I was in. But my mom was there with me, and she's like, Christie, you can be what you want. You can do what you want. I didn't really believe that at that particular time. I remember sharing some dreams and goals I had with a guidance counselor. And that counselor told me to aim lower. It was like, oh, I don't think you can be able to do that. And for whatever reason, those words, even though they were based on crap, right? There was no kind of thing to it, but those words stuck with me, and I really believed. And I always kind of didn't make decisions if I felt like I was going to be challenged, or if I felt like I was going to get a no, I was going to get rejected. I always made safe decisions. And my mom, she called me out on it, and she said, no, you've got to you've got it. You've got to aim higher. You've got to do things that are at a different level. And I think those words still resonate with me today. And I think that's what really helped me go on that year of yes journey. Because I can really hear my mom passed away about 10 years ago. But it seems like, I feel like ever since, she's passed away, I've really internalized all of the things that she's told me, and all of the wisdom and all the guidance she's given me. So I've noticed, in the year of yes, every time I went to say no, or I felt like I was being safe, or I wanted to play small, I can hear my mom saying, no, you got this. You may not know it at the moment, but you'll figure it out. And I felt like, she was like helping me push through, even though she's been gone.
Yeah. People usually have the opposite happening in their lives, where they're finding more motivation and positive reinforcement from outside the home, and at home, they're struggling with managing their parents' expectations. And here it's the other way around. The outside external forces failed to help you see the potential that you had in you, whereas your mother really did become the driving force for that. That's way to switch it up. And she sounds like an amazing person.
Yeah, she really was. I mean, but you gotta see kind of the lens that I lived in for time. I'm first generation American. So there's a lot that I had to figure out. My mom she just didn't know. And, she helped me with what she can, and she surrounded me with a lot of resources, but she didn't know. So I had to kind of bootstrap to like learn basic stuff. Even things like pop culture, it took me a while to really learn. I was the first generation college grad. So I had to figure out the whole daunting task of getting into a college, applying, getting in, and then figuring out how I was going to finance this thing, right? Like that, I had to go through that journey, and then being a first generation corporate professional in an environment as a management consultant. I work with some of the most elite companies in the world, and around people that have never worked with a person like myself, so a person, a woman of color, especially from an immigrant background that I came from. There was just a lot of challenges because I operate in a world where it was not designed for me, and it just was not created for me to thrive in. And so I was constantly, having to go back to hearing my mom say, you can do it. And I don't know, maybe she saw these things for me. I don't know, but I've constantly been against all odds. And so it's so interesting that with Liz's race, the way that we ran that race, it was just and it can attest to her background as well. Liz actually, she graduated from Wellesley College, one of the most elite college, women's colleges in the world. And she's Cape Verdean American. So her family's also, she's first generation American. And I think, we had such similar backgrounds. I think that's what, not only just being sorority sisters, but we bonded, because we kind of come from we're cut from the same cloth, and how we had to figure things out and thrive on our own. So I think that really helped, us understand each other a lot, which is important between a candidate and a campaign manager.
Yeah, it sounds like you're no stranger to obstacles, and pretty much from the day you were born.
It's funny, Philip, I don't see them as obstacles. Maybe when I was younger, I did. But I'm at a point, I actually see it as an amazing opportunity, because right off the gate, I'm able to differentiate myself in any room I walk into. And then from that lens, I know what I'm able to bring. What it does mean that I have to do, though, is that I have to be prepared. So I want to make sure if I walk into a room, I'm most prepared. I'm able to talk whatever the thing is. I've done my research. I've rehearsed. So because I know that I may not have as many shots or opportunities as others. So, to me, I think that gives me the opportunity to step up towards excellence. And that's kind of like how I've really kind of wired myself now. So I don't see it as an obstacle at all. I just see like, wow, I've been given this is the life that I've been given, and it's all about making it the best that I can. Right. And there's a quote that I heard a couple of years ago, and I believe it's true. They said, if you live your life to the fullest and you do everything that was ever like you ever had the opportunity to do, and you do it and you play full out, living life once is enough. And I so agree with that statement.
And so you get into the corporate world on an internship, and how does that lead into project management?
I think project management just kind of fell in my lap just because of the type of person I am. So going back to being a leader, being a young leader, being organized, I kind of just gravitated towards me. It's not like I sought out to run projects. It just kind of happened because I think people saw that I was for the most part always one of the most organized people in the room. So that's kind of how it landed to that. And then I found myself at a very early stage in my career running consulting projects. And, so not just delivering on the work we were doing, but actually helping lead the team to get the work done. So I think it just kind of, again, it's just a culmination of my experiences, knowledge, and skills that led to that happening.
Yeah. And boy, did it really pan out. I mean, now you've had a TED Talk, you're a contributor on several major publications like Forbes. And I think I even saw you took what is little known, but definitely an alternative path in life. You took Seth Godin's alt MBA.
Yeah, that was an amazing journey. For those who've never heard of it, Seth Godin, he's a thought leader. He's one of my biggest role models. He created an alt MBA. It's a 4-week leadership development program. And it really he just created kind of this construct where he, for every cohort that goes through this 4-week sprint, you go through about 15 to 20 different projects with 100 other people from around the world that are kind of curated. So he curates every cohort, and he takes like the best and the brightest across the world to go through this experience together. And in that process, you go through a number of different kind of like projects and different types of assignments, and able to really put things on the table. And it helps with how to make better decisions, how to make sure, things like being able to not make decisions based on sunk costs, which is important. Being able to not be afraid, really challenging people's fears, being comfortable with the, uncomfortable. They kind of really put you through these really hard concepts that he believes once you know them, you really, these are kind of the things that you would learn in an MBA program. He believes that it's something that you can do in a very short amount of time, and it's an alternative to getting a traditional B school. And you're doing it in such a short amount of time with a lot less money, but with the same caliber of people that you would go through. Because at the end of the day, anyone that goes through business school knows that it's not about the curriculum of the business school, more as it's about your network, the people that go through the program with you. And so Seth really kind of harnesses that idea and puts this construct together. And that was life-changing. I did that program back in last year. Again, part of my year of yes. I did that program, and that literally changed. It really created a seismic shift in how I think about the world. Just kind of going through that.
I'm hearing a trend here, and it's funny because it seems to be going as usual against conventional wisdom. A lot of people these days are considering the path of an entrepreneur because of the way the economy is shifting. Like you said, it's changing faster than people are ready for, and entrepreneurialism seems to be the way to go. That being said, everyone usually falls under the trap of doing it alone, thinking, the solo entrepreneur, solopreneur. And from what I'm seeing as your life path unfolds in this conversation is that you've always been involved in organizations or communities. Correct.
There's nothing wrong with entrepreneurs or people that take it alone. I just believe there's other ways there's other ways to skin a cat, right? And it's funny because when people see my profile on LinkedIn, they see the things I'm doing, their first inclination is to think that I am an entrepreneur. I'm a solopreneur doing all this stuff on my own. But if you dig a little deeper, I actually work for a company. So I work for Slalom Consulting now. I've always worked for a big corporation, but I play more of what I call an intrapreneur role, right? So even though I work for a corporation, I always find ways to really carve out my own niche within it, but taking advantage of being part of a broader network. And I've done that, whether it's with my sorority, I've done that in my school, I've done that with like the alt MBA. I've always been part of something bigger because I really believe in community, and I believe that it's better to do with everyone and to be part of some journey together than to go at it alone. And maybe that can also come from the fact that I grew up in a big family. You know, that it can maybe come from that. I've never really thought about it until this moment. But for me, that's kind of like the lens I operate from. Will I stay kind of in that mode? Who knows? Maybe one day I may decide to completely branch out and go solo. But for now, I just feel like, again, success on my own terms. I don't feel like I need to be working on my own alone to be an entrepreneur. Why can't I do that in a corporation that gives me the freedom and the flexibility to do so?
And how do you think you've been able to earn that freedom and flexibility from these corporations?
Working my ass off. You gotta work to earn it. You know, you've got to be able to show and prove that you can deliver. I think once you're able to really deliver and build that, you know, I call it, you know, earning my credibility stamp. Once I'm able to earn my credibility stamp, you know, then I can really kind of take things and really take things to the next level. And I think you've got to have what I call, you got to wanna, Gene. You got to want to do it. You got to want to step up. You got to want to take the lead. You got to want to solve problems. You know, you got to want to take things to the next level. And if you don't have that internal gotta wanna gene, it doesn't matter where you are. You can be by yourself or you can be in a company, at your school, what have you. If you don't have that internal drive, it doesn't really matter what your environment is. It's not going to happen. So I believe you have to want to do it in order for it to happen. And it's in that gotta wanna skill that you build. That's where resourcefulness, that's when you're able to create something out of nothing. You have that kind of that skill set. And it's something you don't have to be born with. You just have to decide that's what you want to develop and start to look at the world in a different lens. So that, you know, sometimes you're like, oh, well, you know, I wasn't born, you know, in a certain sort of circumstances that created that. That's okay. If you still want to have it, you can create it. You just have to make the decision.
You gotta wanna. That's
it. You gotta wanna. Because there's an emotional labor that comes with having an internal drive that sometimes people don't want to deal with, right? So if you don't want to, then it's just not going to happen. And that's okay, right? Because someone else will want to, right? But I think there's part of the gotta wanna, the internal drive, the emotional labor that comes with it. There's a level of success that you're able to create or manifest in your life that just doesn't happen without it.
And it seems like you really have had that you gotta wanna gene driving you through to where you are today, from the work you did with Liz, which is amazing because people today don't step into politics. They like having conversations about it on Facebook, but they don't put their money where their mouth is, or their time, in your case, and efforts, and really get involved. They may not even know how to get involved. They just know that it's a part of life that's out there, but never get involved. Would you encourage young people to actually get involved in campaigns politically as part of their development?
Absolutely. Oh my gosh. Like, knowing what I know now, I actually kind of wish I had gotten involved in politics earlier on, just because of the muscle it builds. But I think the first thing, anyone that wants to get involved in the political process, again, it's that gotta wanna, right? Getting involved in politics is kind of like going to the gym. No one's going to tell you to do it, but you've got to get it. You've got to get in there to be able to see the results that you want, right? In this case, see the results in your government. So you have to make the decision. It's not something that's going to be like required of you. Like you mentioned, civics was taken out. I hope that they maybe bring it back in the future, given kind of the state of affairs we're in, at a geopolitical level. I hope they bring it back. But if not, it's something you can do. And I think the first step, I think the easiest way to get involved into any politics go, start with your local. You don't have to go up to seeing all the, the glitz and glam of the federal, the federal races and getting involved at that level if you don't want to. Get involved with your local politics, what's happening at the city, at the county, at your district level, and find somebody that you admire. Honestly, because politics is hard work. And if it wasn't because I didn't believe in Liz, I don't know if I would have ever gotten involved in politics, right? But I think it's finding someone you admire or someone that stands for what you believe in, and being able to really decide to say, I want to volunteer. That's actually one of the easiest ways to get involved in any political campaign. And you can do, they're always looking for volunteers. It doesn't matter how big their campaign is or not, how much money they have or not. They're always looking for volunteers. Volunteers is the lifeblood, the lifeline of political campaigns. So find someone you admire, find someone that really has the same beliefs you have, the changes you want to see in the world, and go after it. And if you know what, guess what? If you don't find someone you like, or you don't find someone that kind of have the same positions and stance, or guess what? You can run for office too. That's the beauty of things. The minute you turn 18, you can run for office in this country for a lot of different positions. So don't be afraid, to kind of step out and be bold. If you have things that you believe in and you're not finding that representation, you can be the change you wish to see in the world.
There's just so many things I want to keep going on, but I know that we've gone for a while now, and I want to leave the opportunity for people to approach you and explore that further, or maybe invite a second conversation at some point between us. And I want to leave the floor to you now to invite people to visit. I mean, you're an author, you're a speaker, you work as a consultant with a company. This is your time. What do you have out there that's happening right now that you want to tell people about, or how do you want people to reach out to you? And are you open to people approaching you for mentorship?
Yeah. I would say, so first of all, thank you so much for giving me time with your audience and listeners. Thank you for listening to me today. I guess the first thing, if someone wants to get in contact with me, I say they can check out my website. They can go to christielindor.com. And I'm sure, and I'll give you the links as well that you can put on your site, Philip. From there, from christielindor.com, you can check out, my talk. I've got a book coming out this fall. Actually, it's about forgiveness in the workplace. That's a whole podcast episode on itself. But you can check me out there. I'm always open to LinkedIn. I'm a big LinkedIn person, so feel free to connect with me on LinkedIn, Christie Lindor. I'm also on Twitter and Instagram. In terms of mentorship, I've actually starting to maybe think about doing something, maybe having like group mentorship. I have a lot, as you can imagine, I think I'm up to hundreds of people that want me to mentor them. And, I've got a family, my husband and son, and I've got my job, and there's a lot happening. So I'm trying to figure out a way to do that. But if you connect with me on LinkedIn, I'm always answering emails and helping people find information. I have a podcast I used to do, and I've got tons of episodes that archived that you can check it out. So I'm always willing to help people. But I think that's about it. So check me out on LinkedIn or christielindor.com.
Oh, you have a podcast. What's the name of your podcast?
Yeah, it was a pop-up podcast. I did it for a year. It was called the Macy News Unplugged. And it was really about consulting, really helping people that want to become a great consultant. So it was being the mentor that I wish I had. That's actually what led me to write my first book. And then I had that podcast and I literally did it for a year. But the episodes are still out there on the internet. So if you're interested in the podcast, you can go to mecenews.com. That's MECE Muse, MUSE.com.
Love it. Okay. And then let's just end it with this thought. If you were standing in front of Christie Lindor, just coming into high school or just coming into college, and that may be two different things, and you had the opportunity to travel back in time, and you saw them on the sidewalk and you caught their attention, and you're like, listen, I just want to tell you this because I needed this when I was at this age. And because I have this opportunity, I'm going to say it. Well, what is that? What would you say to your younger self?
Yeah. So, it's interesting. And you said it in your question. Christie, high school Christie was different at a different age than college Christie. And so I'm going to have two pieces of advice for the two different Christies. So high school Christie, I would definitely say, sky's the limit. Don't limit yourself. Don't let the story of what others tell you dictate how you live your life. No matter what people may have said or what their perceptions are, you are whoever you want to become, and know that you've got whatever it takes. And I feel like I'm paraphrasing what my mom used to say. But that's what I would say to high school Christie. College Christie, though, I would actually say don't be in a rush to succeed. I feel like college Christie, once I got the gotta wanna bug hit me, I just wanted to do so much in so little time. And, I wanted to be all these things before the age of 30. And I had all these things, and they still have everything that I wanted still happened, but I didn't need to be in a rush. I could have, took my time and experienced and enjoyed life, and enjoyed the ride along the way.
So it would be a delicate balance of keeping that gotta wanna in check, but also keeping it alive.
Yeah, keeping it alive and living life, and not just being about work and things like that. Being able to live and enjoy the ride. Yeah.
It seems like you got a lot to offer the world, Christie. I'm really thankful that we got an opportunity to chat. This is the first time we're chatting, but I hope it won't be the last.
Yeah, thank you.
On the Rhythm, the Blueprint series.